What if I told you that one of America's most famous waterways secretly hides a massive ancient meteor crater, almost twice the size of Rhode Island? Or that, despite being an inland bay, its jagged shoreline is actually longer than the entire US West Coast? Often known simply for its blue crabs, the Chesapeake Bay is actually a region brimming with incredible historical and geographical significance. Prepare to uncover 15 astonishing geography facts you likely never knew about this remarkable waterway. To truly grasp the physical geography of the Chesapeake Bay, one must look far beyond the immediate shores of Maryland and Virginia. The bay's health and hydrology are profoundly influenced by a gargantuan watershed spanning 165,760 square kilometers. A single raindrop falling in the forested mountains of Cooperstown, New York, or rolling off a farm in Pendleton County, West Virginia, will eventually navigate a complex network of streams and rivers to arrive in the bay. This massive drainage basin encompasses parts of New York, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, West Virginia, and Washington, D.C., including over 100,000 intricately connected waterways. Because the ratio of the watershed's land area to the bay's water volume is the largest of any coastal water body in the world, the Chesapeake is exceptionally vulnerable to whatever happens on the land. Every drop of runoff from these 6 states ultimately shapes the bay's delicate ecosystem. Roughly 10,000 years ago, the Atlantic Ocean dramatically reshaped the Mid-Atlantic's geography by completely submerging it. Geologically speaking, the Chesapeake Bay as we know it today is practically a newborn, a classic textbook example of a drowned river valley. This feature was born from the dramatic climate shifts of the last ice age. Approximately 10,000 years ago, massive continental glaciers that covered much of North America began to rapidly melt. As billions of tons of ice turned into water, global sea levels surged upward. At that time, the mighty Susquehanna River flowed freely through a deep, winding valley all the way to the edge of the continental shelf. The relentless rising tide of the Atlantic Ocean eventually breached the mouth of this valley, backing up into the riverbed and permanently flooding it. Over thousands of years, this encroaching seawater transformed the ancient, fertile Susquehanna River Valley into the sprawling, brackish tidal estuary that has shaped mid-Atlantic history ever since. The Chesapeake Bay stands as the undisputed king of estuaries in the United States. An estuary is a dynamic coastal body of water where fresh water flowing from rivers and streams seamlessly mixes with the salty water of the ocean. In the case of the Chesapeake, this creates a spectacularly rich ecosystem holding an astonished 68 trillion liters of water. Stretching approximately 322 kilometers from the Susquehanna River in the north to the Atlantic Ocean in the south, the bay is a massive ecological powerhouse. This unique blend of fresh and salt water provides a highly productive habitat that supports a staggering biodiversity. More than 600 distinct species of plants and animals call this bay home. From microscopic plankton and submerged grasses to the iconic Atlantic blue crab, oysters, and bald eagles, it serves as a vital nursery for countless marine species and a crucial stopover point for millions of migratory birds. Hidden deep beneath the muddy floor of the lower Chesapeake Bay lies the dramatic scar of an ancient cosmic catastrophe. Approximately 35 million years ago, a massive bolide, either a comet or a meteorite, hurtled through Earth's atmosphere and slammed into what is now the Delmarva Peninsula near Cape Charles, Virginia. Traveling at supersonic speeds, the impact triggered colossal tsunamis and threw massive amounts of debris into the atmosphere. The resulting crater is absolutely staggering in scale. It measures roughly 85 kilometers wide, making it almost twice the size of Rhode Island, and it plunges almost as deep as the Grand Canyon. Because it was completely buried under millions of years of sediment, this geological marvel wasn't even discovered until 1983. Today, the crater continues to influence the region's physical geography by dictating the flow of underground aquifers and contributing to higher-than-average rates of land subsidence in the surrounding area. When you look at a map of the Chesapeake Bay, its massive surface area creates the illusion of a deep, cavernous inland sea. In reality, the bay is essentially a giant geographic puddle. Despite covering roughly 11,603 square kilometers of surface area, the average depth is incredibly shallow, clocking in at just about 4 meters. To put this into perspective, a person who is 183 meters tall could comfortably wade through over 283,280 hectares of the bay's water without the surface ever reaching above their head. The deepest point, a narrow channel known as the Hole, located southeast of Annapolis, only reaches about 53 meters. This profound shallowness has massive ecological implications. It allows sunlight to easily penetrate the water column, fueling the growth of vital underwater grasses that serve as the foundation of the estuary's complex and highly productive food web. The Chesapeake Bay boasts a wildly complex and deeply jagged coastline, a physical characteristic that dramatically multiplies its total edge. Rather than a smooth, straight basin, the bay is heavily indented by dozens of major rivers like the Potomac, Rappahannock, and James, along with thousands of smaller creeks, coves, and tidal inlets. When you meticulously trace every twist, turn, and inlet of this intricately fractured coastline, the numbers are mind-boggling. The total shoreline of the Chesapeake Bay and its tributaries measures an incredible 18,803 kilometers. To truly understand the sheer scale of that number, consider this. If you were to take that shoreline and stretch it out into a single straight line, it would be significantly longer than the entire west coast of the United States. This vast interface between land and water creates endless kilometers of wetlands and marshes, offering unparalleled coastal habitats. Long before the era of satellite imagery or GPS, Captain John Smith embarked on a perilous journey to chart the unknown waters of the Chesapeake Bay. In the summer of 1608, operating out of a tiny open boat, Smith and a small crew meticulously explored the bay's countless rivers, creeks, and inlets. Along the way, they interacted with numerous Native American tribes who had thrived in the region for millennia. The culmination of these extensive voyages was Smith's famous map of Virginia, published in 1612. What makes this artifact historically staggering is its incredible geographic accuracy. Relying only on rudimentary navigation tools and indigenous knowledge, Smith successfully documented the sprawling complexity of the bay. His cartography was so precise and reliable that it remained the definitive map of the Chesapeake region for nearly 2 centuries, guiding future navigators through the winding waterways of the New World. While Yorktown often receives all the historic glory, the battle that actually secured American independence was fought on the rolling waves of the Chesapeake Bay. In early September 1781, the Battle of the Chesapeake, also known as the Battle of the Capes, unfolded right near the bay's entrance. British General Lord Cornwallis was trapped on the Yorktown Peninsula, desperately waiting for the Royal Navy to arrive with reinforcements and an escape route. Instead, a powerful French naval fleet intercepted the British ships. In a fierce tactical clash of maritime geography, the French successfully maintained control of the bay's mouth, severely damaging the British fleet and forcing them to retreat to New York. By sealing off the Chesapeake Bay, the French effectively doomed Cornwallis, forcing his surrender a few weeks later and securing the victory that would finally give birth to the United States. When most people picture the Underground Railroad, they envision perilous overland treks through dark forests. However, the complex geography of the Chesapeake Bay transformed it into one of the most vital, yet often overlooked, maritime escape routes for enslaved people seeking freedom. The bay's thousands of kilometers of secluded shoreline, labyrinthine creeks, and dense marshes provided perfect cover. Enslaved individuals in Maryland and Virginia frequently used the waterways to escape, often interacting with a covert network of sympathetic sailors and free black watermen. Fugitives would stow away on schooners, pilot small skiffs through the night, or secure jobs on merchant vessels bound for northern free ports. Famous abolitionists, including Harriet Tubman, who was born near the bay's eastern shore, relied heavily on their intimate geographic knowledge of the bay's intricate waterways to successfully navigate enslaved people to freedom across this treacherous aquatic frontier. For nearly a century, the waters of the Chesapeake Bay were a literal war zone, plagued by violent clashes known as the Oyster Wars. Following the American Civil War, the booming demand for oysters turned the bay's abundant reefs into a gold mine. However, geography divided the harvest. Maryland legally restricted oystermen to traditional hand tongs, while Virginia allowed highly efficient, destructive dredging. Tensions exploded when heavily armed oyster pirates from both states began illegally crossing geographic borders and raiding lucrative oyster beds under the cover of darkness. These pirates equipped their boats with rifles and cannons, frequently engaging in deadly firefights with rival watermen and the newly formed state police forces, often referred to as the Oyster Navy. This chaotic era of maritime violence, fueled by geographic disputes over natural resources, raged from 1865 until the mid-20th century, profoundly shaping the culture of the region. The isolated physical geography of the Chesapeake Bay has acted as a cultural time capsule for centuries, preserving uniquely insular human settlements. On remote marshy outposts like Tangier Island in Virginia and Smith Island in Maryland, tight-knit communities of watermen have lived largely cut off from mainland society for generations. Because the bay is their only highway, this geographic isolation has preserved a fascinating linguistic anomaly: the Hoy-Teeter dialect. Tracing its roots directly back to the English and Cornish settlers who arrived in the 17th century, this distinct accent features drawn-out vowels, unique maritime vocabulary, and phrasing that sounds remarkably close to Elizabethan English. Today, these island communities offer a rare glimpse into colonial-era human geography. However, the future of this unique culture is severely threatened as both rising sea levels and shifting demographics slowly erode these historic island sanctuaries. Bridging the immense geographic gap of the Chesapeake Bay required one of the most ambitious engineering feats of the 20th century. Before 1964, traveling between the Virginia mainland and the Delmarva Peninsula meant a slow, tedious journey on a car ferry. To conquer this watery divide, engineers designed the spectacular Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel, a 28, 3-kilometer-long marvel of human geography and infrastructure. Instead of building a traditional bridge that might block massive military vessels heading to Naval Station Norfolk or commercial freighters steaming to Baltimore, the creators devised an ingenious solution. The massive span consists of low-level trestles that suddenly plunge beneath the waves into two separate 6-kilometer-long tunnels. These underwater tubes allow the world's largest ships to safely glide overhead while cars drive beneath the bay's floor. Recognized globally as a structural wonder, the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel seamlessly integrated a natural barrier into the bustling East Coast transportation grid. The Chesapeake Bay finds itself under immense environmental and demographic strain, largely because it sits squarely in the crosshairs of the Northeast megalopolis. This sprawling, continuous corridor of urban development stretches from Boston down to Washington, D.C., heavily overlapping with the bay's watershed. Today, human geography heavily dictates the bay's health, as more than 18 million people live, work, and commute within its drainage basin. The rapid explosion of suburban sprawl, highway networks, and intensive agriculture have drastically altered the natural landscape. Forests and wetlands that once acted as natural water filters have been paved over with impervious surfaces. Consequently, massive amounts of nutrient pollution, chemical runoff, and sediment from cities, lawns, and farms are continually flushed directly into the bay. Balancing the needs of this massive, bustling human population with the delicate ecological requirements of the estuary remains the bay's most pressing geographic challenge. Beyond its ecological importance, the Chesapeake Bay is one of America's most vital maritime economic engines. Its human geography is deeply defined by the daily movements of global commerce and the harvest of marine resources. The bay serves as the critical oceanic gateway for two of the country's busiest shipping hubs, the Port of Baltimore and the Port of Virginia in Hampton Roads. Giant cargo ships continuously navigate the bay's deep-dredged channels, facilitating billions of dollars in international trade from automobiles to coal. Additionally, the bay sustains a massive commercial fishing industry. Generations of local watermen have pulled immense wealth from the estuary, which remains famous worldwide as the undisputed blue crab capital of the globe, producing hundreds of millions of kilograms of seafood annually. The bay's waters support the livelihood of thousands of coastal residents and form the backbone of the Mid-Atlantic's maritime economy. In a fascinating twist of modern human geography, scientists and engineers are now actively reversing the geographic losses caused by nature and human impact. Over the last century, erosion, land subsidence, and rising sea levels have caused many of the bay's historic islands to vanish completely beneath the waves. Poplar Island, once a thriving community in the 1800s, had nearly disappeared by the 1990s. Today, it's the site of a monumental environmental restoration project. Using millions of cubic meters of dredged sand and mud pulled directly from the shipping channels leading to Baltimore, engineers are artificially rebuilding the island back to its original historic footprint. This massive human intervention is slowly transforming a sunken memory into a thriving 688-hectare wildlife refuge. It stands as a profound example of how human geography isn't just about how we use the environment, but how we can use technology and resources to actively rebuild it. While many immediately think of the San Francisco Bay Area, the Chesapeake Bay is arguably far more interesting and expansive. It is, for lack of a better word, the original Grand Bay of North America. We hope you enjoyed learning all about the Chesapeake Bay. If you want more fascinating fact videos, consider exploring this one about Tasmania in Australia. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.